Perfect. So thank you so much, Ms. Pravina, for giving me this platform to interact with my fellow educators. I would just like to give a brief introduction about me. My name is Pooja Yaduveer. I have been into education for almost 25 years now, currently working as independent consultant with institutions and at tech companies, and also performance mindset coach for sports athletes as well as the adolescents. So now, enough about me. I would like to quickly dive into and begin this session so that we can make the most of the time for the Q&A. Uh, and before we begin, I want you to imagine a scene that I think every educator has experienced in some point in their teaching journey. You walk into a class fully prepared, you have a lesson plan in place, you've got everything already set, you have even your PPTs done, you have your tools all ready, and then you start teaching, you begin teaching so passionately, you're there uh, in the lesson, in the concept, trying to explain as many things possible, and then slowly something starts happening. uh, you see that one student is staring out of the window as though he's already out somewhere, boarded some flight. You see other child engrossed in taking the notes very sincerely. However, there is no emotional attachment. Then you might find the third child who is there physically present but has mentally already out of the place, and the mind is wandering all around. And somewhere inside, we as educators and every teacher wonders that were they ever truly listening? Were they ever engaged? And what is the reason behind them getting distracted? And what if I were to tell you that the problem may not be your teaching at all? The problem may simply be that we are teaching against the natural rhythm of the human brain, because the brain was never designed to learn continuously. As an adult, also, you can experience that. And we always learn in segments, in bursts, in curiosity spikes, in emotional heights, and there's a lot of attention cycle that takes place. And the educators who understand that attention will ultimately shape the future of learning will be able to go forward, because that is the future of learning, and that is what we are going to discuss today. So, first of all, let's reflect honestly for a moment, and you can just keep it. Just ask yourself this question and keep the question answers with you, and maybe we can discuss it later. But just go into an introspection mode where, at what point do you usually begin losing your classroom? I mean, what happens when the attention go looks like going away? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it the 20th minute that this thing happened? So just think, just introspect. You do not have to answer it right now. However, the fascinating part is that this happens even to exceptional teachers. You can be a brilliant one. You would have 10 things up your sleeve to keep the children engaged, but it can happen to anybody. And there's research in neuroscience that says, and learning psychology that suggests that human attention naturally dips every 7 to 10 minutes unless the brain is emotionally re engaged. So, after every 7 or 10 minutes, there will be a lack of attention. It might not be completely gone away, but there will be a dip, and they need a re engagement to again take it forward, which means that most of the classroom today are actually not struggling with the intelligence. The children are doing good. Uh, there is a there's basically struggling with the sustained attention, and there's a massive difference between students being physically present and cognitively engaged, because the future of teaching will not belong to educators who speak the longest, it will belong to educators who understand exactly when the brain disconnects and how to bring it back. You have to be aware when is that dip happening and how and when are you going to set in the engagement tools. Because if you're not able to observe that in the classroom, then this is going to happen every time. Now, show.
Please continue.
Yes. Yeah, so is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, yeah. So as we were discussing that why do the traditional lessons fail? What has been the reason behind it? So most of the lesson plans today that are designed around the syllabus completion, we cannot deny the fact, and that has to happen. That's how the system is set, and we have to take the chapter forward, take the syllabus forward, and we have to deliver the content. Very few of them are designed around a transformative question, which is how does the brain actually remember? What is the concept behind retention? And as soon as we do that, everything changes because students rarely, as I said, remember the longest explanation or maybe the PPTs that have been put or maybe lots of notes that they've given. What they're going to remember is when could they emotionally connect, when did they get emotionally activated, stimulated the most, and what surprised them, what involved them, what gave them that continuous engagement and the experience that their uh, child brains could actually hold on to. So now, I just want you all to kind of again wear the introspection hat and think about teacher that one teacher who you still remember from your childhood. I'm very sure we can have more than one as well, but just remember that one teacher whom you still remember and maybe has been your role model as well. So not the subject, but just the teacher. And now you need to ask yourself that why do we remember them after all these years? Was it because they have made beautiful lesson plans, they completed the syllabus on time, or their correction work and everything was on time when they came in the classroom? They were able to finish the complete class in 40 minutes. Or was it because every time they entered the class, everything felt alive? You felt engaged. You were looking forward to that particular class. There might be certain stories that stuck onto you while they were teaching and sharing them with you. And also, there are times where they believed in you more than you believed in yourself. So those emotional experiences are which stay with us for longer time. I'll just request you to remember, just recall which teacher made that difference, and that is the emotional imprint, which is what remains. Because students may forget the information, but they rarely forget the emotional experiences that are attached to learning. And now we're going to understand what is that 7-minute window or the 7-minute rule that I was talking about. So neuroscience suggests that attention naturally dips after 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, unless it is reactivated. So immediately after 7 minutes, as soon as there's a stimulus given, it can be re-engaged, it can be reactivated because the brain learns in short, meaningful bursts. So after approximately 7 minutes of passive attention where the child is just listening, the cognitive fatigue starts rising and mental wandering quietly steeps in. So the child is there, but is mentally not present. And this is known as the attention cycle, which means that if we continue speaking continuously for 35 or 40 minutes straight, we've already lost the child at the first 5 minutes. But they would have, even if they would have tried to engage in a certain manner, it would not have been that productive. And this is where the educators need a shift, not from teaching more, but from teaching in intelligent uh, rhythms, giving them that stimulation. And the goal is now no longer how much did I teach? It takes a shift, and the question becomes how much remained alive in the learner's mind after the lesson ended? Because that is going to be what is going to cause the maximum and most comprehensive retention. Now, why all the more this attention cycle and understanding the 7 minute brain window more important in today's time? Because we are the educators of today's time, our learners are the futuristic learner. We need to understand why do we need it as of now, because our learners are growing up in a completely different neurological environment. We all are aware of that. Their brains are constantly consuming the reels, scrolling, a lot of visual rapid stimulation happening, and endless notifications which is being bombarded onto them every day. And whether we agree or not, their brains are now conditioned for the quick speed moment, the novelty, the interaction, the what you call even the instant gratification, the likes, the replies, and the blue ticks. And children, apart from children, we all also are experiencing the same. So which also means that the classroom is no longer competing with another schools. We're competing with a complete different thought process which is around. It is competing with algorithms. uh, and if we talk about algorithms, we all know how quickly they shift when you go to any social media. So Instagram totally understands the attention. The Netflix understands our attention, how to grab it and how to hold it there. There are gaming platforms which are feeding us with the dopamine, and they understand what is called as the interruption psychology. They know where to disrupt, then move ahead, and they are keeping their audience engaged via that. And sadly, if education continues to remain that one directional, while the world around learners becomes increasingly interactive, attention will disappear. And not because the students are not able to understand or are weak, but because the brain is adapting to the environment where there are repeated experiences. So they need that sort of a input as well. Now, we will understand what the brain remembers and what is the science of attention. So neuroscience tells us that the brain remembers what emotionally activates it. It retains emotion, surprise, curiosity, storytelling, movement you would have experienced in your classroom also. As soon as you're telling them in a storytelling manner, they're like all there with eyes wide open. And novelty. Now, by novelty means something that is always new for them to experience, and it is not something that is in repetition or monotonous. And that is why the students may forget an entire chapter, but remember one powerful classroom story for the next 10 years. And why so? Because the emotions, they act as a glue for the memory. Even for us, wherever we feel we've experienced extreme emotions is where we have those memories still there with us. May it be from childhood, may it be from our teenage, they've stuck on to us. And this is where the educator becomes transformational. Uh, the moment we stop teaching only to the intellect and begin teaching to emotion, curiosity, and experience learning definitely becomes unforgettable. And so now let's try this amongst us as well. So I want you all to think of one classroom moment the students never forget. Like it can be any of your classroom moment. You'll notice like something fascinating. The moments that we remember are rarely passive, but they're usually like funny, emotional, surprising, interactive, or deeply human. So if there is any episode, any event, any memory that you have where you think that your students would have remembered it, just recall it and understand what has been the effect of such a memory. And also what happens in our brains is that when such event takes place, our brain asks one question, which is like, is this emotionally important enough for me to remember? If yes, it'll be held on to. If not, it might be sidelined. And while we remember our memories, while we have our own core memories, those are the things that always stay with us. And which also now reminds me to just give you a reference that anytime you get an opportunity, then do watch an animation movie called Inside Out. One, it is a beautiful movie and it has a lot of emotions to share. And also, it tells how and what the what impact the memories have on us, and how the emotions are connected. So this was just off the grid. Thought I will suggest it to you. So now we need to understand the shift that is happening and the shift that we also need to make happen as an educator. So, as educators, the biggest shift now is to stop teaching continuously and start reactivating the intention intentionally. Like, it cannot be that you can say, okay, I've tried to make it more interesting, but as soon as I go in the classroom, it doesn't happen because it's a continuous process. You will have to keep evolving. Every 7 minutes, we know that the brain needs a shift, a stimulus, a reset, an input, which can actually kind of trigger and get them engaged again. So it has to be induced, it cannot be naturally attained. So now, as an educator, you are not just going to be like somebody who's delivering the content, you are also going to be somebody who I would like to kind of put it across. And I really like this term, which is called the attention architect, because you're building that attention for them after every 7 to 10 seconds by inducing small stimulus in between, because you understand when the brain disconnects and knows exactly how to reawaken or maybe re-engage inside the classroom and make that attention more productive and comprehensive. I know this all sounds very overwhelming when we have like syllabus to finish and we've got a lot of other things to do. And I've been a teacher myself, and I understand that this is always like, oh God, we've 100 things to do, and it's not easy that every 7 minutes I keep a track on the watch, and I do it. But it is something that I've tried and tested. It does take a time initially, but then once you are also in your own set mode and you understand how to go about it, it becomes easier and it is more productive. Now, this is the basic engagement formula here that we have. So, all that you need to do here is that it's kind of a framework also that is given to you, which you can actually start applying, try applying, and see how it works for you. One is to trigger their curiosity. So just don't begin immediately with some info or something. Begin with something that is intriguing. Ask them a question, which kind of tells them and puts them in that, okay, aha zone. What do we do now? What is this question about? Maybe you can give them a contradictory statement or a statistic or a relatable story, because curiosity opens the doorway towards attention. That is the best way to go forward. The next that you can do is to deliver the core idea, the concept, clearly and briefly. Now, briefly is very important. You don't have to go in a lot of detail, but it has to be clear and brief, not overload. Because at times people get confused with a lot of information being put. I know I'm also speaking for more than 7 minutes, and your attention can also go down. But that is what we need to keep questioning ourselves, that how do we make it more engaging? So make the concept clear, but keep it as short as possible where the message is put across. Then step 3 is to activate the participation by asking questions. Like, what do you think? So I would also like to ask you questions, which you can park it in the chat box, is that have you ever faced a similar scenario in your classroom? Or what do you think that why does the sun set in the west and not in the east? I'm just giving a hypothetical question. And if there is a story that I've narrated to you, I would like to predict the climax to it. So can you tell me what happens in the end? Can you tell me what happens in the next frame? What happens in the next scene? So ask them questions which they can predict. Then there can be a lot of discussions that you can ask them to discuss with each other. Ask your partner, what does he feel about the situation? I would like to ask you, what are you feeling about today's session? So ask your friends as well. And that kind of encourages more interaction, also gives you more play area, more field to play around when it comes to solving doubts and giving them more information. Because then they are like, okay, we are involvement, and now we are going to understand what is going to happen. Then the step 4 is to reset their attention. So now you shift your own tone, your movement, your pace, your activity, or something. So if you're maybe just as simple as you standing at one place, please shift yourself. You've been talking at a very high pitch, just bring it down to base and just talk to them in a changed tone. At the same time, the visuals that you can change for them, you say, okay, so now we've learned this, let's go out and explore it further to understand it better. So you're breaking a pattern which can take them towards distraction. And this doesn't have to be like a big short disruption. You can just give them maybe 10 or 20 seconds of this disruption and then bring them back to the concept. Now the last part is where you are re-engaging them. So once you've given them that pause for a certain amount where they were at the verge of getting distracted and have come back, and now we re-engaged and we are ready for the new learning cycle. So now, are you all ready for my new slide to come to your way? Perfect if you are. So we can also understand few attention reset of the micro engagement ideas. Why? Because that is the way it is happening all around them as of now. Nobody's taking 50 minute lectures. It's scrolling up the screens within 5 seconds. So these are few examples that I can kind of share with you. One is that you can ask the learners to stand if they agree. So per se, you've given them a thought and you say, if you agree, then you stand. So you're breaking the cycle of them just sitting there. So either they stand, they sit, they raise their hands. That's what we've been doing till now, because that instantly activates their brain. You can also use one word reactions for them to emotionally participate. Ask them to predict, as I said, what happens next. Let them teach their partners, let them explain the same concept, and bring out new thought processes. What did they think about it? What did they agree? What did they not agree? Or maybe just the kind of words that you use, that, okay, as soon as you go in the class, do you know what happened today? Or, I have a surprise for you. So these also immediately bring their attention back to what is happening in the real life. And these are tiny shifts, but they go a long way. We're not asking, as I said, a big disruption, but these small things which can create that curiosity is actually going to help in the longer run. And you can have your own variations of the same. You can maybe bring something as a tool with you there, bring somebody else in the classroom. Like I used to a lot of times do is that if I would have my teacher, my co-teacher there with me, and I would just bring her and say, today ma'am is also going to be with us. And they were like, wow, what is ma'am going to do? She would just come and interact and go. But that kind of helped me prepare them for the session, which I knew needed more of attention. And now I'm very sure we all are familiar with this word, which is called Netflix, and which has become an inevitable part of our lives. But there is a lot of things that we can learn from Netflix. So Netflix, when it came into the market, they understood something that we educators urgently need to understand. They knew that attention is designed intentionally. They knew how to play around that. Every few minutes, the visuals change. There is a suspense, there is a hook, there is a cliffhanger moment happening. And that's the reason we are all stuck. What is going to happen in this series? What is going to happen here? Every time there is so much of what next hook given to us that we are there sitting for hours and hours, but still we don't get bored. We're watching episodes to episodes, but we're still not getting bored. And we're doing binge watching. Now, how do we convert it into binge learning through Netflix? Why? Because they've understood one, the attention process. The same way, all we need to do is that we also should be able to, and we can give it a try if the lessons are designed similarly, like not as an entertainment or giving them all that jing mang that Netflix offers, but the engagement architecture. Like how do we put them at that place where they're like very much curious? How do we keep giving them those learning hooks where they're ready to take up the next concept or the next chapter and are waiting for the next episode of your syllabus to happen? Because nowadays the learners, they definitely need a lot of information. They have the access to Google, but they need information which is also meaningful, which has the emotional connect, stimulation, and their brain needs to be kept alive throughout the learning process. So we can learn that from the Netflix idea of keeping the people engaged and having their attention. So this might make your next lesson plan a bit more interesting, and for you also to try something new. So now this is just for you to understand, and I also go back in the memory line. When do your students look more alive in the class? Now think about it. What is that one moment when you think that the students have been most alive in the class? So keep the answer with you. I would like to hear it in the chat box. We'll come back to this because of the paucity of the time. I'm just kind of trying to take you through as much ideas as possible. But for me, the students looked most alive in the classes when I was just having an interaction with them, although they did not know it. The complete concept was wrapped under that interaction, and I was giving them information. But I think that is the time they look most alive. And this is what we are at. We all are the future educators, because we are not the only people. We are not just there to finish the syllabus the fastest. We are the educators who can sustain curiosity, create emotional connection, activate thinking, and do lots and lots of other things. We are as such doing lots of things, and at the same time, just to maybe make it more comprehensive for futuristic learners, we will have to work on the attention, because attention is the real currency. And educators who understand that attention will become unforgettable and start focusing on having that attention as much as possible rather than finishing just the syllabus, you will see that huge difference in their learning and the retention. As I said, it's a slow process. We'll learn everything new every day, but this is something that is doable and becomes very interesting. Honestly, I'm telling you out of personal experience, it really gets very interesting because you are also thinking a lot of new things and trying to figure out how we can make that happen. So now I would just like to leave you all with one final thought, that years from now, the students and even I have forgotten the formulas, the definitions, the worksheets, maybe even the lesson that we did, the PPT slides that are being shown now. But they will always remember how seen they felt, how the learning made them feel, what was the emotional connect, how engaged they felt, and how alive learning felt in your classroom. Because the students do not remember that, okay, what has been the best chapter, or what has been the most beautifully written chapter. What they remember is that what were the moments that give them that, ah, wow, okay, this is how things happen. I remember my history teacher, she never carried a book, but she would always narrate us the story, all everything. So Akbar, Babur, everything was like in a story form, and we would visualize that era in front of our eyes. And those memories are still very fresh with me. I do not remember majority of my maths. Science, I again remember because the teacher gave us she just felt us visible. She just felt us that we were valuable and she was there for us. So that was one emotional connect that I had. And I'm very sure you also would be experiencing that every day. And I think that's the true purpose of education, which is not just delivering the information, but also touching those emotional aspects which help them be a better human in coming days, and which can make them curious, confident, attentive, and a better human being. So let us all take a stride time towards making the education as comprehensive and as interesting possible. So thank you so much once again to all the educators who are listening to me and have been a part of this initiative. Thank you so much, Ms. Pravina, for giving me this opportunity. This was a little part of what I believed in and I thought can be helpful to my fellow educators. So I have shared it with you. Now, any questions you can definitely ask, or anything that you like to share, any of your memories, we are open. So thank you so much once again. This is Pooja Yaduvir. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am. If you can stop sharing the screen, we can have a better view of you. Thank you so much. As there are no audience, I will ask you a couple of questions, ma'am. So,
No.
what are the signs that students have reached their attention limit?
So, ma'am, typically what we see that is that, as I quoted there, you will have somebody looking out of the window, somebody who's like taking the notes very, very attentively, but you can figure out that all he's doing is just taking the notes in a robotic manner. You will start hearing whispers. You will start children scratching, getting distracted, playing with their pencils. So these are very, very visible signs that you can relate to. So as soon as you see that is happening is where you take that shift. And if you're not prepared for the shift, all you just need to do is that just ask a question to them. That's it.
So, does the type of content affect the length of the attention window, ma'am?
Oh yes, definitely. So that's the reason whenever we are preparing a lesson plan, ma'am, it doesn't have to be hoarded with content. We need to pick the concepts and then wrap them around the content. What we generally do is we pick the content, go there and tell them, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, because the syllabus completion becomes our utmost goal. But if we pick up the concepts and then go through them, it definitely helps us to gauge, to get their attention as much possible.
So, ma'am, how does this concept apply to online versus in-person teaching?
Okay. So, see, because in the physical teaching that happens, there is a lot of movement that you can see. So, per se, I can even go to a child who's distracted and just ask him, so, okay, so what do you feel about it? And when I'm moving, also, they also, if you would have, we as a teachers, have felt that as soon as the teacher starts moving, suddenly children become attentive. So that physical aspect of moving in the classroom and that connect definitely makes a huge difference. But now, because the future is going to be the online classroom, that connect has to be made when we have the videos all there, because my daughter is also studying in an online school right now. So the videos up and running and the kind of activities that you plan. Again, it is how you are planning your complete session. So they have a lot of breakout rooms happening. They have any individual one-on-one interaction. Their learning is always in a manner where everybody has to present. So the connect is always there. So it is how we devise and how creative we are as educators. That's what
So,
Netflix says.
right. So, what mistakes do educators commonly make regarding attention spans?
Ma'am, I would technically not call mistake, because I see that they are overwhelmed with lot of things. So their attention themselves is not on what they're supposed to do, because they are also distracted. I will suggest every educator to just before they're entering the classroom, remove all the mental clutter that they have. Literally do the exercise of draining it, throwing it away, and saying, now I'm prepared for only this class, and my brain is only focused here. And this is what I'm going to do. Not worrying about, oh, I have to send that list. I have to go down and meet the principal. Or my corrections are still not complete. Because a lot of multitasking happening. So first you need to get your attention in place. And there are times, ma'am, it is also called, like on road also, when you're driving on a straight road, and suddenly you feel lost in the sense that it's called driving hypnosis, like road hypnosis. When you're driving in a straight road, you get hypnotized because it's a straight this thing. Even when we are teaching, we do that. When we are giving lectures, we get so hypnotized in our own speaking that we do not see anything what is happening around. So
Right.
the self awareness has to come within, that that is what I need to do, that is my task. My task is not there just to go and do this. And I can tell you, ma'am, it becomes so interesting for you and such a stress buster for teachers and educators as well, when they go with that mindset. Because
Right.
then it is not something that is like, oh my, I have to again go. So once out of the classroom, remove every clutter, go there with a smiling face,
Yeah.
and make the learning interesting for them and more for yourself, because you need to wear the oxygen mask first.
Right. I was just about to ask you that my next question was regarding the teachers. Can
Yes.
this principle be applied for training teachers or adult learning? Was my next.
Definitely, ma'am. Attention is, as we also missing it nowadays. As I said, we are also those Netflix children only,
Right.
where we cannot even wait for 1 minute to go through. We are not. We are buying subscription to subscription so that we don't even have to watch an ad.
Right.
And as adults, we also need to learn something. And it's just I'm sharing it with you since you asked this question: is the art of doing nothing.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people who are very good at doing nothing. I'm also one of them who loves to like just
Mhm.
chill. But then that chilling is not chilling with Netflix or anything. By doing nothing is nothing. And when you're just with your thoughts, and that is what should help. And we do it with the the adults and the teachers while we take their trainings.
Right. So, what would you suggest, Ms. Pooja? How should curriculum be redesigned with this principle in mind?
So, seeing the duration of the attention span, at the same time, the curriculum length, the classroom division, I somehow believe that we need to get off the chapter and the lesson and the question answer aspect. You can have a syllabus, but make it only concept based. And that is what we practiced when COVID hit. I made my team sit down and they removed the complete chapters and question answers. We were only focusing on the concept. So if my child is in third, what is the literacy, numeracy, aptitude that the child, a third grader should have? We were just picking those concepts and doing it. If we focus on that, that is more important because, ma'am, you also would have realized that a lot of our time is lost in doing the question answers in the classroom, doing the projects in the classroom, which are not actually making much of the sense. So if we can kind of make it more concept based and then divide it into activities which come within that attention span and give them as much external stimulus, experiential learning, because that is where the retention actually comes into picture. That's my take.
So, ma'am, what are the biggest challenges in implementing this approach?
So the biggest challenge is top to bottom, which I've always been telling. Like, okay, at school level, we can have this implemented, but what happens when the child goes to the board classes? Because the board examinations they also will have to be changed. Then 11, 12, then the entrance examinations. So everything has to come from top to bottom. All we are doing is we are shifting and making all the changes at the bottom level. But once they go ahead, it is not helping them much. So the idea of learning has to come from there. If you see the abroad universities and everything comes from top to bottom. They know that if this is a particular college, your marks might not matter that much, but what have you achieved in your co-curricular? How has been your school report? How has been your personality report? How do you write your essay and crack your interview? For them, that matters more. So I think we'll have to go that ways, and then we will be able to have a very concrete and effective framework which has attention also in place.
Last but not the least, Ms. Pooja, what future research directions do you see for this field?
So if we're talking about a learner's attention, there are a lot of areas which still need to be explored, because as soon as we're talking about a human being, there are a lot of factors that come into picture. Now, if I'm to put it in very simple words, the child may not be distracted just because the lesson is not interesting. He may be distracted because what has happened back home, or what he's anticipating in the next class, or what is going to happen once he goes back home. So these all factors also need to be kept into the picture, and understanding the complete uh, uh, demography of a child's learning environment. I think that needs to be more researched and then brought in forward into the learning environment outside of us.
Great, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Pooja Yaduved, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation, ma'am. We
Pleasure.
truly appreciate you sharing your expertise on our platform today. And before I end the session, anything else you want to mention, Ms. Pooja?
No, I just want to extend my gratitude to you for giving us this opportunity. And I've seen the other videos on the platform, and I've also learned a lot from them. And I hope that this community keeps growing leaps and bounds and we can learn from each other. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll end the session now. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.